Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from or if you are catching us on replay. This is The Awesome Journey, and I am your host, Kelle Steinecke, along with my co host in care, Christy Howard. And today's awesome journey that we are bringing you is from Mr. Cameron Cushman. You guys, we are so privileged to have him with us today, and it's been a long few months. I was super pumped when I was reviewing notes this morning uh, because Cameron's story, y'all, is just absolutely incredible. And is another one where I'm going to tell you, sit back, relax, get your cup of coffee, tea, adult beverage, whatever your choice, and listen to this incredible journey, not just of inspiration, motivation, and hope, but of sheer determination and resilience. Um, just a little bit of a background on Cameron, and I say this about all of our guests because it's always true. If we were to sit here and do their resume, we would spend half the show doing that. But Cameron is a retired Army from the Army, and he was also an infantryman turned storyteller and tells stories of those paths less traveled, which I absolutely love. He is a filmmaker and director and an advocate for veterans, showing them how the outdoors can also help with healing. His incredible journey, I'm telling you, is going to, I hope every week everyone takes away, will be something to make you feel better and look at your life a little bit differently and a little bit, I think, with just more hope and love and compassion for one another, because our journeys really are all united in one way or another. So, that all being said, so we can spend as much time with Cameron today, I will turn it over to my co host in care, Christy Howard.
Cameron, I am so excited that you accepted us. That's why I like to stalk people's profiles and get into what they do. And, it's always good that you have, when you have mutual guests, and my passion for our veterans has gone all my life because my father was a veteran. But I'm going to let you get on that platform because how this started is interesting because I love water.
Yeah.
And it scares me. It doesn't scare me because I'm here. But tell us your story. Let's start and let's go for it.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I've got a pretty unique military journey in terms of kind of my health issues and how that all played out. But like many, so born, mostly raised in Florida, spent a few years in New England. But I didn't join like a lot of people do straight out of high school. So I actually was a working photographer right out of high school for a few years, and about 4 years actually. And then one day I just woke up and said, you know what, I want a little more adventure in my life, and I think I'm gonna join the military. And so I went down to the local recruiter's office, went to the Army and the Marine Corps. Um, I'm not fully sure on why I did end up going the Army route, but I know when I walked in, I said, "Listen, there's one thing I want to do, and it's I want to be in the infantry, and that's it." And of course, like for a lot of recruiters, when you're, you do the ASVAB and whatnot, and like there's a lot more job opportunities than the infantry, and I was like, "Yeah, that's me. That's what I want to do." And so I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, which at the time was referred to as the home of the infantry. It's now changed to the School of Excellence, but went there for OSIT, one-stop unit training. So for infantrymen, all your training is together. So your basic training and then your advanced individual training is all combined. And so was there from August of 2010 to December. And then straight from there, went to my first duty station, Fort Wainwright, Alaska, which I was really excited about. Even though being from Florida, definitely a culture shock weather-wise. Landed in Fairbanks, Alaska, to I want to say like -25, -26 degrees before wind chill.
That's a big change from Florida.
Big change, and I flew directly from Florida too because I'd gone home for that post. You get like a week off or whatever. And so I went home first. And even though it was December in Florida, I think it was still, probably 75 degrees.
Right.
And so it was definitely a big, a -70-degree temperature difference. Got up there, fell in love. U.S. Army Alaska kind of falls under its own regulations. So a lot of things that were changing in the big army, throughout most of the nation weren't really affected in Alaska. So kind of my experience there was a lot different than when I finally went to Fort Hood, Fort 𝒏𝒆𝒄 or whatever
Mm.
it's called now. But it was just I fell in love with Alaska and got there again very end of December. I want to say right before Christmas, and then by April we were boots down in Afghanistan. So it wasn't like a very short period. Deployed to the
Wow.
Middle East pretty quickly after. So obviously, right when I got to Alaska, we were it was game on training just for what we thought we would be doing in country, and that included a rotation to the National Training Center in California, which is, I would say, most Army people will agree, like the most miserable place that you go for training. Uh, it's in the middle of the desert in California. It's super
Where
hot
is?
and freezing cold. It's a few hours outside of Barstow.
Oh,
Mm.
okay.
Ugh.
So, and the weather is just miserable there. I mean, again, burning hot in the day and then freezing at night. It's a desert. I do love deserts, but NTC just sucks. And so, we get back from NTC, you get a little bit of pre-deployment leave, and then boots on the ground in April of 2011 for a 12-month rotation to Afghanistan. And at the time, this is when the big army was kind of experimenting with rotational cycles, and they cut or after our deployment is when they went to 9-month deployments from 12-month deployments. I think for the purpose of like saving money on R&R, because a 12-month deployment, you're supposed to get sent home for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is mid deployment, or whenever some people would go on R&R like the month after getting in country, which is brutal because then you come back and still have 11 months in country.
Right.
Mine was kind of dead smack in the middle, but Afghanistan, arguably one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life, and I will stand by that till the day I die.
The poppy fields, they're beautiful, except they're harrowing.
It's a beautiful country, and a lot of people think that the Middle East is like very just this desert. A lot of people confuse Afghanistan with Iraq, like in terms of what it looks like. You think just hard desert, which where we were was was the desert, but not far from where we were. You've got the Hindu Kush and these incredible mountain ranges, and again, just a beautiful place, and a culture shock to many people. And that's the Middle East to begin with.
Yeah.
Afghanistan kind of lives in multiple time zones, like or like time periods. You'll see a Lexus burn down the highway, and then 2 seconds later, a horse and carriage. And so, a unique place. And again, a beautiful, beautiful place. And so we were a QRF platoon, so a quick reaction force.
Where in Afghanistan were you?
So we were in 𝒏𝒆𝒄 province, so about 2 hours north of Kandahar is where we were. And so we were in Kalat City, which is, I'm pretty stoked that that's somewhere I got to be, for the sole fact of one of Alexander the Great's like kind of fortresses or areas of high ground that he built when he went through Afghanistan still exists. And so the Afghan, like the National Police, run that now, but it still stands.
So you were able to see positives in a negative situation.
For sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, Afghanistan's a weird place. The culture is there's beautiful things about the culture, and then there's very strange things about the culture that we don't have to get into. But it's a beautiful place, and I've talked about this over the past few years several times about going back, finding a way to go back and produce a documentary. And so, those are some things that may be in the works.
Love that.
I got 4 kids and a wife, don't want to be too stupid. But, so I'll try to, I know most people want to hear the medical side. And so
I just want to hear your story. You can go wherever.
Yeah.
Afghanistan,
it's actually very interesting. I mean,
there's no script, man.
Yeah. And so, Afghanistan. So we were a quick reaction force. So essentially, a platoon for those who don't know. Basically, we needed to be able to leave the wire within like 10 minutes, right? And so if anyone was eating chow or not, or at the gym, like we had to have radios on us because if something, popped off, we were the first to spin up for that. And so primarily what we ended up doing the whole deployment was we were a QRF for EOD. And so, your guys working on roadside bombs. And so we mostly worked with Navy EOD, best in the business. I wouldn't want to work with anybody else. Sorry to my.
Were you working with Navy SEALs or just the Navy?
So Navy EOD, those dudes are. I would go on to say Navy EOD are SEALs first. I know they. I think some point during their pipeline they do go through some type of buds, if not buds, before going to EOD, tech school. And so these dudes are super squared away. The best, most respectful, professional, and people that I've worked with. Super funny, but when it came down to doing their jobs, they didn't play around.
Yeah.
And no offense to my fellow Army folks, as obviously I was in the Army, but Army EOD was nowhere near the level that our Navy friends were, and Army EOD may have got us in trouble a few times, and fortunately, nothing bad happened, but we may have literally driven over some IEDs that Army EOD said weren't there. But no big deal.
Got hurt.
Yes, thankfully. It happens, right? But Navy EOD is who we primarily work with, and phenomenal dude. So we were QRF for them, and kind of during fighting season, for those that don't know, Afghanistan, at the time had like basically a fighting season where the majority of your Taliban fighters are coming from Pakistan, and they go back in the wintertime. So fighting is kind of during the hotter months. And so we kind of dove right into that when we got into country, arrived in April. It's already 100 degrees. And then pretty much, doing 18, 20-hour patrol days. Wake up to an ID at whatever time that first call comes in, go do that. And then, if we're not on, a QRF mission, we're probably running supplies to somewhere else, to another FOB or another COP, or doing a big, mission to, drop off some vehicles that have been blown up down in Kandahar, because they have, the facilities to either repair or get rid of those. But it was busy. It was real busy. Long days, and you're drinking water that's been sat on a tarmac for who knows how many years, boiling in the sun with all the microplastics and everything else. And this is sadly why nonprofits, that focus on cancer awareness for veterans exist, because I think the numbers right now is 1 out of 5 veterans that served in the Middle East, is going to be diagnosed with a significant type of cancer. We're not talking,
that's crazy.
There's no good cancer to be diagnosed with, but we're talking, colon, pancreatic, the serious ones. And they're saying that number is going to increase in the future. And so, and a big part of that could, is obviously the toxins that are in the air, the burn pits and everything else. But water, people don't realize, the amount of microplastics and everything that is in a bottle of water, especially
which is interesting, because when I lived in Arizona, people would always say, don't drink, you keep the bottle in your car. Don't drink it when it's hot. I still do. I mean, I'm parched, so I would drink. And then now I always have a bottle that's just half empty or whatever in my car, and go on to the story, because now I need to start.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I'm still probably guilty of that too. We live in a time, unfortunately, where everything we ingest is probably going to kill us. But so we got a bad batch of water, and I wouldn't say that the water was bad from sitting in the sun. That definitely could have been the case, but it was the one water that you did not want to get. There's like different brands of water that we would have, and one of them was Kinley, which is a Coca-Cola like product, which was the one you wanted. That was, if you could get any bottle of water in Afghanistan, it was that brand. And so we didn't have any of that. And so we got this other one that, you know, the label is completely in, I'm not sure which language it was in, because I'm not sure which country it was bottled in, but
Right.
you could shake that brand's bottle of water and see sand, like, or some
Mm.
type of
Sediment.
something, you know, sediment. Yeah. Uh,
Ugh.
and I mean, that water did not taste very well. And, but we drank that throughout the time in country. And there just so happened to be this one time.
Because when you're parched, you're parched.
Yeah, you got to drink it. I
Right.
mean, you're
Amen.
drinking a lot when it's 125 degrees.
Yeah, you need
And
it. So, like,
yeah,
you're kinda it's a damned if you do, damned if
yeah.
you don't situation.
Oh yeah, you're either dying or you're, you know, you're just gonna drink what's in front of you. And obviously, like, there's all these other terrible things around. Everyone's got energy drinks like Rippets. Those are, which I think like maybe illegal in the United States now, but Rippets those are at every base and everyone's pounding those things. Fortunately, I never was a big energy drink person, so I didn't drink those,
I
but
don't
I know
either.
my peers would pound back dozens of those at 130 degrees. But um, and so yeah, we all got super sick off of this batch of water. I want to say it was almost the entire platoon, at least half
Wow.
of the platoon. And so
So I'm gonna get into a little bit of details. How did you? Okay, so the whole platoon pretty much gets sick. Is it, you know, throwing up, diarrhea, all that stuff, or stomach ache, or just feeling off? I mean, how did you know that something was off besides drinking the crap?
yeah. So everyone had like real bad dysentery, which happens, I would say, almost to every single platoon that has gone through the Middle East during
Right.
one
Right.
point. Like
Right, just
dysentery isn't.
traveling, people get that, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean
So it's not like, by no means is it this, you know, crazy
abnormal.
you know, abnormal thing that happens. It happens.
Yeah.
Um and so I, you know, I think kind of what may have been some of my issues was, this is like mid fighting season, you know, 125-degree days, going on patrols for 20 hours. Still, we're wearing full kit, vehicles that don't have AC, you know, so like the stress that it's already putting on your body in an already stressful environment, while you're, you know, you're throwing up, you're crapping your pants on patrol, like really nothing you could do about it.
Right.
Right.
Just luck of the pot that I would seem to have some lasting issues. Fortunately, to my knowledge, nobody else in the platoon had any issues that stuck with them. I seem to have issues that like were noticeable right after like the sickness kind of had passed, and just some blood in the stool kind of from that period until I got back to the States, you know, several months later.
Oh my God.
Um,
Damn.
and
Were they giving
obviously,
you any drugs? I mean, they're just like, get over it
yeah,
and go fight.
you know, in country, typical, you know, like you're kind of like, yeah, dude, drink some water, brother, drive on, you know,
Right.
you know,
Rub some dirt on it, man.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and that's how it is, and it has to be that way.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's no other way to really look at it. And
damn.
maybe they gave us some medication that maybe sped up, you know, the dysentery aspect of it, but you know, obviously whatever damage had been done was done. And
Mm,
so, you know, finish out the deployment. Fortunately, you know, my platoon, we didn't lose anyone in the platoon.
thank
You know,
God.
we had some IED instances and probably a good bit of blast exposure, but no, you know, we didn't lose anybody from our platoon itself. You know, I lost several friends, you know, which I feel like anybody can say who spent time in the Middle East. My roommate, you know, he was Doug Cordo. He was killed by a small IED.
Mm,
And you know, sadly, like a lot of deployments, you know, we lost, I feel like, more people post deployment. You know, like we've lost the majority of people that I know to suicide versus to deaths in country.
mm,
And it seems to be, you know, something that we're always trying to figure out. Hey, how do we fix this? And sadly, it's always the guys that no one thought it would happen to, and that's probably why, in our own way, we may have been guilty of maybe not reaching out to the cheerful one at the most. You know, like, oh, he seemed fine. And you know, it happens. It's life, unfortunately. And, you know, that's why there's 45,000 plus veteran nonprofit organizations now, you know, trying
yeah,
to fix
thank
this.
God.
And, you know, the numbers, we're kind of jumping a little here, but the numbers they say, you know, 22 a day is kind of the numbers they're talking about. And, uh, you know, we recently were having a discussion with some folks, and that number is looked at in terms of VA. people that are enrolled with the VA.
Yeah, because
which
look at
is
the numbers. If it's sort of like the job seekers, you don't,
right.
really the
What
numbers so much
It's
out
and
their
there.
version of the number because everyone
right.
I've talked to says it's at least double.
Oh, and that's the thing. I think it's like 1/5 of the veteran population is in the VA,
Yeah.
and if I look at the majority of my peers, guys I deployed with, they don't have a VA rating. And this is a big thing with infantry guys, with a lot of combat guys, especially, is too proud, like,
Yeah.
somebody else needs it more than me. Right. I say that all the time.
And look what happened with you.
Right.
Yeah. Amen to that.
And so, I get back from Afghanistan still having some of these issues. And so I go to, a proper medical facility, and they're running tests and kind of like, hey, good news, we didn't see anything wrong. Bad news, we don't know what's wrong.
Yeah.
And, I tell this story now smiling and laughing because it's, this is, 8+ years of my life, 8 years of my life living post surgery. And so we're talking, 10+ years of just experiencing this. And kind of just went about my job, went to some schools, took some, promotions. And I want to say, right around the time I picked up my E5, I had gone back in for some more checkups and scopes. And so they'd done a new upper endoscopy and colonoscopy. And this time they're like, hey, we're not sure if this is what's causing it, but we do see a small sliding hiatal hernia. If, 1 out of 3 men in their life, if you've got reflux, you probably
Right.
have a sliding hiatal hernia. Not
Yeah.
uncommon. Mine would go on, obviously, to become pretty bad, which is not the normal case. So, like, by no means should people that have a sliding hiatal hernia like start panicking.
Right.
And they told me, like, it's never going to affect your job, And so a few months later, I PCS to Fort Hood. Army breaks my contract, unfortunately. I'd re-enlisted to stay in Alaska, and it was approved. And then the Army just one day said to a few of us, actually, like, nah, we're sending you to the war. So Fort Hood was deploying to Korea. And so they needed bodies. People won't willingly volunteer to PCS to Fort Hood. It's a cesspool. And if you were stationed there and you loved it, I apologize. I will firmly stand my ground that place is the worst of every military installation there is. Maybe not as bad as Fort Polk, but I saw nothing but the worst in my experience, and people that were in longer, you could say, like, it was different during my day, but everybody I know that ever was at Fort Hood had nothing but terrible things to say about the leadership, just the facility. Look at how many murders have happened on Fort Hood.
Crazy.
How many missing people have from Fort Hood. The name change didn't change that either. Like, I could count off the amount of stupid things. Right. I could count off the amount of stupid decisions that leaders made at Fort Hood that didn't happen anywhere else that resulted in the deaths of soldiers during training incidences. And so, anyways, I go, it's me and my wife, and we're in Alaska, and I'm like, hey, my platoon sergeant said I just came down on orders. We don't know where, but I came down on orders. And she's like, we just got approved to stay here. And because we wanted to stay in Alaska, I was planning on getting out, and I'd started like the hiring process with Alaska State Troopers at the time. And like, we wanted to make Alaska home forever. And I was like, we're PCSing. And she's like, well, it's probably to Fort Carson, because I had turned down orders to Carson, which is, would have been great, Colorado. And I was like, yeah, totally, probably Carson. And she jokingly said, she was like, as long as it's not Fort Hood, and yeah, well, it was. And this was right after the second, like, there's probably been multiple shootings, but the second like major shooting that had happened there, it was a soldier had been denied leave to go see his grandmother who was passing, I believe. And so he ended up shooting his leadership. And so, this a few years after the major shooting of all the dudes returning from country, but still, like, for an infantryman, no infantry guy wants to go to Fort Hood. Fort Hood is a Cav world, and the biggest rivalry in the Army is infantry versus Cav Scouts. It's just the thing. You make fun of each other. It is what it is. It's probably always been that way. And, you know, now they do a lot of similar things. And so infantry guys just like to give Cav Scouts a hard time. I've got a lot of really close friends that are Cav Scouts, and I can't go a day without making fun of them because it's just in me.
It's like the Marines against, the Navy, and
for sure,
Yeah.
and obviously we obviously all make fun of the Air Force. I see you in here, Dan Horgan, so I had to
yes,
that, but,
you did the cold plunge.
Yep.
Yes, he credits you.
We can talk more about Dan later. He's a part of my story. But
yeah.
So during all this time, you were still having, illness.
Yes.
Severe, like not just basic.
Your wife wasn't she pregnant, or was your
my wife? Well, yes. So my wife was pregnant with Carson. Carson was our third, and so when we moved to Texas, at this point, my health has started to get kind of progressively worse. Like the reflux, they said that wouldn't bother me, has gotten like severe now, to the point like a few months after we're at Fort Hood, Texas. If I was doing push-ups or in a vehicle and hit a bump, reflux is pouring out of my mouth, which is affecting my daily life.
Right.
But again, this is something like I won't really complain about, because like if I could go back, I would take that reflux any day of the week over what I deal with now, Yeah. And so, I go to the gastroenterologist at Fort Hood, and they're putting me on every medication there is, Reglan, Nexium, all these anti reflux meds, and didn't respond to a single one of them. And so I'm at a rotation at NTC again. And it's like the day after our main live fire. So I was Advon flight. This is just another example of Fort Hood being a cesspool. I was the Advon party. So the very first people to go to a training site or a deployment, typically for the reason of either they have the knowledge or capability of setting up something, or they need to return sooner. And so in my case, it was dual focused. I could set up all the vehicles, but also my wife was pregnant and due kind of right around the time of return. And so I was supposed to be the first to come back. I ended up being the last in the entire unit to go back. But our second day, like in the box, I was in a vehicle that does not have a vehicle mounted weapon system. And so there is no mount for a 240, for a 50. And my leadership was insistent that I manually hold the 240 outside on its bipod, which whatever. Well, we're driving right into the sun, and we can't see anything. And so my driver hits a waddy, which is like, a hole, and that 240 comes and hits me in the face. And so all my front teeth, like 7 or 8 of these are fake. I smashed out every one at 6 or 7 a.m. I didn't leave the box until 2 a.m. the next morning because training. And so, ridiculous. And it was, I want to say springtime. So it's cold again. And man, my teeth are, anyways, not, stupid. I go back to like proper NTC, like, the Fort Irwin, and dentist puts this temporary bridge. It breaks like in 5 minutes. I go back, and it's another dentist. And his first question, this part of the story will make sense. He goes, "Do you have really bad reflux?" And I was kind of like taken back by that. And I was like, "Oh, I do." He goes, "You have severe like burning on the back of your teeth, and I can like see damage to the back of your throat. You need to get checked for like Barrett's esophagus."
And that could be the reason why they fell off so quickly when he put a temporary on.
No, the temporary broke because it's just too big of a bridge.
Because it was massive.
Yeah. And he said it would break too, probably. But the second one that this doctor did last me about it several months. But and so so he actually put in a Red Cross message for me to go back to Port Hood because they didn't have the medical like team
Excellent.
to be like, hey, we need to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
My leadership denied it, and so I didn't get sent back.
Wow.
And so I ended
Oh
up
my
getting put
God.
on some detail to. It's really funny. I got put on a detail to actually drive the Red Cross people to and from Port
Oh my
Irwin
God.
to an
That's like
airport.
an evil joke.
It's so fun. It's funny thinking about it, and
Oh my
But
God.
now you can.
yeah,
Right.
and
I mean, you
and
have to, right?
yeah,
I
and so
mean,
I end up being the last to go back home, literally. And so I get back
Well, did
home.
you miss your daughter? Your daughter's
No, nope,
birthday?
I didn't miss my son's birthday,
Oh, your
fortunately.
son. Sorry.
Yep, nope, no worries. He was born like 2 weeks later, thankfully. But yeah, didn't miss that. And so, anyways, I get back. They're running all these tests now, and they're like, "Listen, your reflux is real bad. Like, you don't have Barrett's esophagus now, but if you keep up with this reflux, you are risking that. You're risking esophageal cancer. Like, we need to do a surgery." And so they recommend a Nissen fundoplication, which if you Google, there just wasn't a lot of information at the time. And,
oh
I
my
want to
God.
believe what these doctors and surgeons are telling me. They're like, you're going to
Right?
be kicking down doors again in 2 weeks. And
Oh,
yeah, I don't even see under the perfect surgery with no issues how I would have been kicking down doors in
2
2
weeks.
months, let alone 2 weeks. You know, Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, so I go in for this surgery and they don't really tell you a lot of the things like they didn't tell me I'd never be able to throw up again, which some people are like, man, that's awesome. Like, no, no, that's not awesome.
No.
Um, if I am sick, I physically can't throw up and I am doing major damage to my body attempting to throw up.
Oh,
Um, and so going for the first surgery, June of 2015. Um, wake up from the surgery. She's like, yeah, surgery, it was amazing. It was really good. But we did find that not only did you have a sliding hiatal hernia, you had a paraesophageal hernia. And so this is where the real danger was happening behind the scenes. So a sliding hiatal hernia, right? If you look at a graphic, is inside, basically it's your stomach sliding up and down into your esophagus. Um, a paraesophageal hernia sits on the outside. And so it's not visible from a scope unless it is like protruded into
right.
the stomach, like pushing into it. A paraesophageal hernia can kill your stomach over the long course of time because it'll twist it to death.
Yeah.
So
So
this is kind of that like, where was the surgery a mistake because she did all the damage? But if I hadn't had the surgery,
You would have
right.
never done.
that would have happened, but I'd still probably be in a better situation because then it most likely would have been esophagus to intestines. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I still wouldn't have as much issues. Anyways, um,
So
the
that surgeon made it worse.
yes, so she fixed it, right? But I woke up retching from the surgery. So the anesthesia that they gave me made me very, very nauseous. And so she blamed me for the surgery
Oh my
failing.
God.
And like
Oh, okay.
her
You're a
words were like,
horrible unconscious person.
gosh, why would you retch? Like what kind
Wow.
of idiot? And
Oh my.
so, about 2 days afterwards, I'm starting to feel like a lot of pressure in my chest. And I'm like, man, something's not right. But like my brain's like, I did just have a surgery. Yep, probably inflamed and whatnot. And so I end up going back about a week later, and I'm like, something's wrong. Like it's at the point I'm having difficulties breathing now. And she's like, PTSD from the surgery. And I was like,
Oh
Wait,
my
ma'am,
God.
I'm begging
was
you.
this a new surgeon? Like this is the first time she's ever done anything?
Nah,
Well, her
no.
bedside manner sucks.
She,
I
Well,
mean,
most
she,
surgeons' bedside
God.
manners suck.
this surgeon,
Oh,
unfortunately, now is a
well,
surgeon
they
in the
don't tell you
civilian
it's your
world.
fault, but
Yeah. And she still is a surgeon somewhere, I want to say in
oh,
Illinois or Iowa or something like that. Now I
that's a shame.
Google her every few months, and I read reviews that look similar to mine. How she still
Interesting.
practices is insane. But so I'm begging her for a barium. And if you've ever had a barium swallow, it's like drinking chalk milk
Yeah.
Yeah.
and pop rocks. And I don't know people who would like willingly ask for a barium unless
Right.
something is
No
wrong.
one.
I went in, I'd say every day, I need a barium. I need a barium. I need a barium. Nope, you
Oh.
don't. Nothing's wrong. And one day I finally go in and it's about a month later. And at this point, my chest is making a noise. Like it sounds like a sucking chest wound, like this high pitched squeal. And she's
Oh
like,
my,
"Oh, I hear that. Yeah, yeah, go get a barium." So I walk over to radiology and
oh my God.
doing a barium, and the radio tech starts laughing. He's like, "You should see the size of this hernia crushing your lung right now." And I laughed. I was like, "Yeah, that makes sense."
Oh my.
And there he goes.
Oh,
He'll
talk
come back.
about a cliffhanger. He'll be back for sure.
He'll come
Oh
back.
my God. I mean, just imagine. I mean, bad enough going through it, right? But having all these people be so just flippant. And not flippant's not even the right word. Just friggin' rude.
Well,
Laughing because you
yeah, surgeons I've had my deal with surgeons. So let's see if he's going to come back here. Let's see. Come on. Did you just freeze now? I think he just froze. Technology. Kelly, I think, just froze. Or who's frozen? Frozen Pop. I think Kelly's frozen. That's right. It's his Montana internet. But is Kelly frozen? Could be the Arizona internet. For once, maybe my internet's actually working. I don't know. I don't know. Can't see you, Cameron. You can talk?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
You know what you look like with a beard.
That's weird. Hold on. Let me figure this out.
Okay. Kelly just popped off too. For once,
Okay.
my internet's not all screwy.
Let's go. Come on. It's so weird because I've now switched cameras to a normal, just to my computer, and that still isn't showing up for me. But you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Well, at least we have that going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, just to continue to, yeah. I've dealt with surgeons many times screaming at them on
Yes.
somebody who's sick.
And so, this, so I go back to her office after we've now realized what's happened. And she's like, "Okay, we need to do an upper endoscopy tomorrow to see how bad it is."
Oh.
And so we go in for the upper endoscopy, and she confirms, obviously, what the radio tech had seen, and the camera actually butterflied. So like she couldn't even get it fully in there. It basically hit that area and turned around. And so the next morning we do an emergency surgery. And this is the surgery that forever would change my life. So this is the surgery that
you couldn't ask for a different surgeon at this time. Like,
nah,
I didn't like this person.
Typical Army. You don't get the luxuries of choosing those things, and and so, yeah, they go in for the second surgery. And at the time, we don't realize, she doesn't say that, she severed my vagus nerve, but obviously when she was in there, she did sever the vagus nerve, didn't tell anybody. And, maybe she didn't know.
So explain to those that are listening what a vagus nerve is.
Yeah. So
that's not the nerve when you go to Vegas.
Right. So your vagus nerve is arguably one of the most important nerves in your body. Right. And so this controls, like, I'm going to say it almost controls everything. It has a say in everything that we do. And so picture anxiety. You have a severe anxiety attack. Your heart rate spikes to, 120, 130, maybe beyond that, because that's your body's like alerting you, hey, something's not right. For me, because my vagus nerve is damaged, say I have a severe panic attack, which I really dealt with last year, some really bad anxiety. Say I had that anxiety attack, my I could literally look at my heart rate on my watch, and it would show that I was at 55, 60, which my body wasn't alerting me that I was in a panic attack. So my body figured out other ways to alert me by mimicking my health issues.
Right.
And so, my biggest issue with the vagus nerve damage is when she severed the nerve, it paralyzed my stomach. And so you have to do which is called gastroparesis, which they do a few tests that you'll go through to see. And there's one called a gastric emptying study. And it's essentially where they you eat radioactive eggs in under a certain amount of time. And then you do, imagery every 15 or 30 minutes for 4 hours. And so typical normal person at the end of that 4 hours will have 96, 98% empty rate, right? So almost all of it's gone. At the end of the 4 hours for me, I want to say it was like 0.1 or 1% emptying. And so they diagnosed, okay, something's wrong. And at that point, they started running, right. They started running other tests to see, hey, what is the issue? Can we figure out, is the pressure off? And so all of this stuff, is clearly, wrong. And so they finally, they sent me to 𝒏𝒆𝒚 down in San Antonio to start, they've got a much better qualified team down there. And at the time, we didn't realize how bad it was because I hadn't really started eating yet. Again, because you kind of have to learn how to eat again. And the one thing that was
weird. Were you on like an IV with nutrients or something?
No. So
how were you even eating?
Yeah. So you're supposed to be on a water, a liquid diet. And so I actually couldn't.
How you started with the water.
Right. And so I couldn't even drink water. And so the vagal nerve damage caused me to have severe esophageal spasm. So picture just a heart attack sensation with the combination of what feels like you're choking, but you're choking from your esophagus, not from your throat, right? Which is kind of hard to picture what that looks like. And so I was literally, in a way, choking from my throat. And so it's kind of hard to explain what that feels like. Very uncomfortable. It feels like a heart attack sensation, essentially.
So it's not like clearing your throat. It's just sort of all coming. It's worse than that, and everything's coming out. Yeah.
Severe pressure in your severe pressure. Did I cut out there for a second?
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
You and I.
So severe.
Now you just cut out.
Oh my God.
Oh, now you are. You're good. You're good. Keep on going.
I don't know what's going on.
It's goofy. I told you. And we're not even Mercury in retrograde.
Yep. And so I where was I?
The severe pressure of the
yes.
Yeah. The esophagus, or however you say it. I can't say it.
And so
you're in and out. Yeah, you're in and out. But just keep on and we'll figure out in between the words.
Oh, hold on. This is frustrating.
Super weird.
Hey, for once, it's not my internet.
Well, it was weird. It just would not let me back in here, which is just strange.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. I can hear you.
I think the quality may not be as good as it was before audio-wise, but if you still can hear me.
Absolutely.
We can hear you great.
Okay, cool. So the yes, esophageal spasms. And so at this point, I am not drinking water at all. Obviously that is not good or healthy. And so the only thing that I seem to be able to get down past the esophageal spasms is Gatorade. And the hospital with vitamin A toxicity. And at this point, I've gone from 195 and really in shape right before my first surgery to I want to say 145, 147 or something. Like I'm not looking too healthy anymore.
Right.
And so they start doing a bunch of upper endoscopies and trying to figure out how bad it is. And at this point, I've kind of like learned how to eat somewhat again. And so I'm eating, mashed potatoes, rice, stuff that's easy to break down or pass. And I look and feel like I'm 6 months pregnant. I've got so much gas buildup. I'm so bloated. I'm in severe pain, like excruciating and like bedridden. And we can't figure out, what this problem is. And so, as they're running all of these tests to try to figure out, what has happened, all at 𝒏𝒆𝒚 now, by the way, they've like realized after the first one, they thought that I was lying about not eating. Cause when you have an upper endoscopy, like, hey, don't eat after, sometimes it's midnight, sometimes it's 24 hours. I hadn't eaten in 4-5 days. And I woke up right away from the anesthetic and they're like, why, kind of yelling at me like, we told you not to eat. And I was like, I haven't eaten anything. And they're like, then what's this rice, And they're like, fine, you'll come back tomorrow. And went back the next day and hey, guess what was in my stomach still? Rice. And so at this point, they're like, all right, this is bad. So they send me to 2 specialists.
They're idiots.
That 𝒏𝒆𝒚, yeah. And one of them is a surgeon who was a Mayo Clinic guy and phenomenal. He joined for the right reason, right? And so he joined because he truly wanted to serve. And he was the guy in his career that if you went to see him, it was because you were messed up. And he did all the repeats of surgeries. And, like if somebody was on their, if somebody was on their 7th gastric bypass, like they went to him. And so, he says that we're at January now of 2016. And
so this has been going on since 2000.
So 2011, 2012 is when I first got sick. Obviously major health issues now start after first surgery, June of 2015. And so he's like, hey man, we don't know what surgery we're doing. We're doing one of 3 surgeries where we're doing either take everything she did down and maybe we don't need to do anything. Maybe it'll heal on its own, or we're going to take down what she did, redo it the right way, or final and last resort would be to do a pyloroplasty, which is disabling the bottom sphincter of the stomach. So essentially opening the bottom of my stomach. And so I don't know which surgery I'm getting, So at this point, obviously I don't have much faith in the medical field. And as I'm getting put under, I'm like, I don't know if I'm waking up from this one, boys. And so I wake up and, and he says, hey, Cameron, we had to do the surgery we didn't want to do. We had to do the pyloroplasty. And he's like, in my career, I've never seen so much scar tissue and so much damage as what I've seen with you. He's like, if I could describe your insides, it looked like, somebody on their 9th gastric bypass that's 800 pounds, and it looked like somebody took a scalpel to the inside. And, immediately it helped with a level of the gas and the bloating, because obviously food was dumping out now, but it caused really bad dumping syndrome, which is kind of what it sounds like. So like you go to the bathroom right away, but the real dumping syndrome aspect of that is you losing your nutrients.
Right.
And so I became severely hypoglycemic right away. I mean, my blood glucose dropping into the 20s and 30s, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. And for those who don't know, if you drop below 70 for the average person, you're going to start getting a little lightheaded. Below 50, you're burning brain cells, like at risk of seizure, coma. You die at 0. And so I was, hitting the 20s and 30s, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. And unfortunately, this, the hypoglycemia is still here, and we're 8 years of that. I've better learned how to manage it, but I had a seizure while I was still active duty, a hypoglycemic seizure, and I was home alone.
So you were active duty through all these
Yeah.
surgeries in and out. They didn't say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I think you need to, we'll pay you
Yeah.
because our
Right.
army doctor screwed you up."
Yeah. That's the funniest part of all of this, because the doctors literally are like, my unit has abandoned me at this point. Like, I'm a dirtbag now because of all these health issues. Like, which
Shame.
that's
That
the
had
way
to
of the
feel great.
infantry.
That's a complete shame.
And so
It is
obviously, like,
horrible.
I wanted nothing to do with the military.
I bet.
Understandable.
Yeah.
And so they find me unfit for duty now, of course. Sometime around February, I believe, which is crazy to think, like, I hadn't even gone to a formation or anything for maybe 6 months. And I mean, like, truly was forgotten about, if you want to just put it that
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
And
Shame on that.
so
Yeah, for
I start my VA process, and it's as bad as my initial. I will say my initial. I've had some really great VA healthcare since getting out, but my initial experience was terrible.
And I just met somebody you're connected to. Her name's Jamie, that she helps with the VA because she went through it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, she was sharing that, how it's
yeah. And I remember when I went in for my initial VA, because if you're medically retiring or medically separating, you do it while you're still active duty. And so I'm going in for that. And the doctor, I kid you not, she wasn't a doctor. She was a glorified nurse. Yes. But she was eating spaghetti in front of me during my thing, which you're not even allowed to eat. Like, during these procedure or
There's a lot of empathy right there.
Like, talk about tone deaf. Like,
right.
Oh my God.
And so she's reading my my chart or these claims, right? And she reads out gastroparesis. She goes, "Don't you mean gastritis?"
Oh my gosh.
No.
You idiot.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
And so I laughed, and I was like, I mean, I wish, like,
right.
I wish that was my issue. And
oh my God.
And so she argues with me that there's no such thing as gastroparesis. And I was like, man,
okay.
Oh my God.
I was like, ma'am, you've got a computer right in front of you.
Google it.
Feel free to Google it yourself. And she's like, I think I know what I'm talking about. I've been doing this a lot longer than you. And I kid you not, like, this is like real, and so she's just denying everything, putting in, like, typing in things that don't even make sense.
Yeah, she's an idiot.
And so,
idiot.
2 weeks later, I get my rating, and it's an 80%. And all my leadership's like, you should be stoked. You don't, like, who says you deserve that? And I'm just like, I'm being told by doctors I'm never working again, and that I'm literally going to be on I need a permanent IV. I need a feeding tube. I need a gastric pacemaker. And I have a family of 3 kids and a wife. And remember, Carson's a newborn,
Right.
well, he's a year old now, but after dealing with that, and so basically I like kind of lost it at that point. Like there's just no possibility. And I went back to that VA clinic and I walked in. She denied things that literally I had all the documentation on, you know, like it gave me this huge rating for depression, which is like a cop out for the VA because depression is one of the only ratings that is curable. And so if you, it's like a front. So if you give somebody 70% depression, but then they don't realize technically the VA could say you're cured 2 months from now and take 70% away. And so,
and that's why the suicide's so high.
Right. And so I literally walked into the VA. I'm genuinely shocked to this day. I still was not arrested. I walked in, or at least the MP's called. I walked in, walked right past the front desk, went to her office and like threw my paperwork. Literally like threw my paperwork basically and was like, this is, and I like screamed, this is why dudes are killing themselves in the VA parking lot.
Who's Cameron Cushman?
My mom.
My mom.
And
you have a wonderful son.
And so when I walk out in through the waiting area, I kid you, mind you, I'm in uniform. And so like my name, it's clear who I am, you know? There's like a major, you know, a first sergeant. I think there was a full bird colonel in there. And they all looked at me like, and I'm waiting just to get ripped into. I was like, in my head, I was partially like, maybe I just made a mistake.
Right.
And I looked over at the first sergeant waiting for him because everyone was kind of like expecting the fellow enlisted person to ream me. And he just nodded his head in a way like, shit, I get it, brother. You know, and
because he knows what Buster is. He understands this.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I walked out into the, you know, into my car, and it's rare for me to break down or cry or anything like that. And you know, I just was like, dude, is this my life? You know?
Oh my God! But a human being can only take so much. Like truly, I think. Your journey to this part before you actually, and I don't even want to say lost it, that was earned. The ignorance of that woman, I mean, is all of them, but her totally inexcusable. One of them independently would have been worthy of your response that you finally gave. But it is like, God, what do you all expect? How do you expect people to act? You're treating them like they don't matter. I mean, 100%. Like that's just Cameron.
So Cameron,
your journey through your positivity, and you're able to see the positivity. You're not the norm. I would say that most people would have probably lost their shit way earlier. And it's a crime. And this is part of the reason we wanted to share your story, is because you're not the only one. People forget, you know, this is the stuff that happens when y'all aren't on the battlefield. You're not deployed. These things are going on regularly. And then this is what's happening, and it needs to have a voice. And that's why it's so important that you're sharing your story, and just because it does. I mean, I've heard it multiple times, but it still just blows my mind. How many stops, but then how you continue to find a way to say, basically, hey, guess what? F you. I'm going to find a way to get my life back.
Yep.
So let's sort of fast forward on to, obviously you went through major depression because if you didn't, that, you know, you're superhuman and nobody's superhuman. But about how I think it was your daughter that came in and sort of pulled you out, and going into, it's Texas that you were, you know, went through, you know.
Yep.
So can you, I mean, we can sit here all day, but I can't.
Because that was a definite pivotal moment for sure.
And so my daughter, Savannah,
so Carson's named after Carson in Colorado. Savannah out of Georgia.
So we have four now. So we have Logan, who's the old, Savannah, Carson, and then Grayson, who's our youngest, who's 5. And so my daughter, you know, who may have been, you know, 2, 3, probably 3, at the time of all this, and every day, can we go to the park? Can we go to the park? And no. no. And then one day she didn't ask me, and that was the day I was like, oh, I'm a piece of crap. I need to fix this. And I wasn't, by no means. I recognize that, but I felt that way. And she didn't know. She didn't understand. And my kids jokingly now, they see me doing what I do now, and they're like, Dad, you're not really sick, are you? You know, and my wife will joke. My wife will see me now somehow, and I don't know how I can even explain that I'm capable of doing it, but my wife will see me run 15 miles, and she's like, what's going on? You know, and
That will.
I explain it as
no
this.
doubt.
I don't have anything else that you can take from me, like
Yeah.
physically. And, you know, like, so my willpower is just like, well, just keep going, you know? And so, yeah, when that had happened, I realized like I needed to make a change. And me and my wife had some long, hard conversations about, hey, what is life going to look like for us? Obviously we're getting out, we're moving back to Florida to be closer to family to help out. And we had the hard conversation of, I need to find my love again of the outdoors and get back outside. And if that means I die on the side of some creek along a river or a mountain or wherever that is, I showed the kids that I didn't let some disease control and run my life, you know? And so I started going fly fishing again. And man, I was passing out. I'd have my hypoglycemic issues, and my friends fortunately would be there and pump some sugar into my mouth or be there to grab me and help me through it. And the few friends I had left still while I was in that, you know, didn't kind of bail on me like everyone else had.
Well, and I hope all those other people see this, because, you know, something you're crappy.
Yeah.
You don't walk away from friends when they're having hard times. You don't stop communicating with them.
And the Devil's River is where I found my true healing. On my behalf, the dumbest thing I probably could have done was go to the Devils. The Devils is in the middle of nowhere, South Texas, near the border of Mexico, near Del Rio. If I would have gotten injured there, there's no service.
Right.
So if somebody's would have had a Garmin or InReach, it would have took 45 minutes to get me out of there. I would have died, you know, like, but that's where I found my peace, was on the Devil's River. And I have such a connection to that body of water.
And it's interesting what it's called too.
Yes.
That and
yes.
it's water.
Yes. And it is like no body of water you would ever imagine. The water is crystal clear. I mean, Florida Keys blue, like incredible. Dan Horgan, I had the privilege of bringing Dan on the Devils. And
Is that where Dan dropped the F-bomb on film?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You're welcome,
and
Dan.
So we can jump a little bit. So at this point, I've gotten out. I'm medically retired. I'm still at 80. The petition, they said we stand by, because I petitioned it with the lawyer when I was still active. They said we stand by our raters.
Of course they do.
And so, fortunately, the VA system in Florida, for my sake, is overwhelmed because of retirees. This helped me because the VA could not review. Their wait was years for re-reviewing, you know, disability claims. Because of that, they have to send you to a third party. So I went to a civilian, and they sent me to 2 different doctors, and both of those doctors read my chart. I wasn't in the office for more than 5 minutes for each of those, and they laughed. They're like, "Dude, why are you not 100%?" And I was like, I don't know, you know. At this point, my wife is working like 2 different jobs because I'm not working.
God bless her.
I've registered for a school despite being told I wouldn't go because I knew I needed some money. And so the BAH. And so I registered for a school in Fort Lauderdale, which is a 2-hour drive with minimal traffic from Vero.
Yeah.
And I drove there 4 days a week, and I held a 4.0 the entire time.
Good for you.
Of course you did.
Because you're a determined person.
Unfortunately, the school closed the quarter before I was set to graduate.
Of course.
And so, you know, but fast forwarding to that far, I had started getting a good bit of work. It wasn't really necessary. I didn't need to, you know, it was fine. I would say, like, for the first few years, I hated everything that had to do with the military. I wanted nothing to do with the community.
I bet.
I wouldn't, like, literally, I talked to some friends that I served with from Wainwright, nobody from Fort Hood, and besides one guy. And then one day I was on social media. This is probably the fall of 2018. I see some nonprofit had brought the very first trip of vets down the Devil's River, and that was like the main river that they were gonna be doing, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get involved. I need to do something, you know, and so I reach out, and the guy, he says, hey man, I can't pay you. And I said, listen, I'll find work in Texas. I'll find a way to get to the Devils. If you let me pick the date for the trip, I will make it work. And so April of 2019, I drove out there and filmed a wedding, and then went to the Devils. And I was at the stop sign right before the bed and breakfast that we all meet up at. And I turned around. I said, no, I don't want anything to do with the veteran community. And I made it about 1,000 feet or so, maybe a little more, and was like, Cameron, what if they have a story that's like yours? And so I turned back around and I went, and I filmed that trip. And
voice in our head,
yeah,
is smarter than we are. Just
yeah,
for sure.
And so I filmed that trip. It was their second trip ever. The nonprofit was called the Iron Freedom Foundation. And then they asked me to come back and film their next trip, which is November of that year. And then on that trip, they asked me to be a board member. And so I was the chief marketing officer for them for about 4 years before I stepped down last spring and left the organization. But I got to put a lot of people on a body of water that saved my life, tell a lot of stories. And Dan happened to be one of the guys that came through the program. And, you know, we've stayed in really close contact, and love the guy to death.
New friends, because those old friends.
Yeah.
You know, it goes back to the season, reason, a lifetime.
Yep. And now, you know, kind of towards the end, when I stepped down from the organization, I had started working with a lot of other nonprofits, and now I've been fortunate enough to work with, you know, a handful. Stop Soldier Suicide, Project Healing Waters. They're one of my, you know, clients that I work with continued basis now. A lot of small organizations, Two Wolf Foundation, Four Season Fighters.
22-0. Did you do something with them?
No, I was a participant with them.
Okay.
So the first time I was technically a participant, they cured my anxiety. So big shout out to that. Phenomenal work that they're doing over there. But yeah, you know, I've been privileged to work with a lot of nonprofits, and then outside of that, like just telling a lot of veteran stories, and just, you know, trying to be there as much and preach the get outside, get into the water, like whether it's like going for a hike, like up a mountain, if you have that, or walking through a park in downtown New York, if there's one piece of grass, you know, like get outside, breathe that fresh air. And the films, like, I don't care if my film gets one view, obviously, I mean, that's depressing, but if a film that I do gets one view, but that one person that watched it needed to see it and it saved their life, I've done my job. And I've gotten those phone calls that, you know, a film I did on a gentleman named Ben, Army vet, and he said something that's so powerful in that film. And, you know, there's part of me that hates that film now, just technical purposes, but the meaning behind it, the message is phenomenal. And he says, you know, there's power out, or he says, everything has its place out here. The life, even the death, knows where it belongs. And I just need to find where I fit into that. And like, you know, we're made up of so much water. We're all connected to the water, whether we've discovered that yet or haven't. The water is healing. For some people, it is truly the feeling of water being around, like surrounding them. Some it's the sound. Some it's just looking at it. And I mean, medical miracle for my case, like I've literally been told that when I'm on the water, my glucose tends to not drop as much. My nausea, because I'm nauseous 24/7. It doesn't go away. I've been nauseous since 2015. And, you know, and my nausea, the pain doesn't go away. It's there. I don't take medication anymore. It doesn't do anything for me. And so, but when I'm on the water, that like pain settles. And, you know, I've had doctors run a million tests and basically are like, listen, the only explanation is endorphins. Your endorphins are giving you what you need. And it's turning into the stuff that you need. And yeah, a lot of times I'll pay for it on the back end, you know, but
it's also you're dealing with your passion. I mean, you're not focusing on the illness. You're focusing on other stuff, and that's, you've got that will to live.
Yep.
My father, I mean, I'm not going to go into that story, but he was given a month to live, and we had him over a year, but he was on like an IV. He couldn't eat for a year, but it was the will to live that, you know, he's still snow ski. I mean, just, so when you see that in the water, and then you share, you know, you shared your story, but now being the person who can videotape and show the other people their story so they can look at it and go, hey, I'm here for a reason.
No, 100%. There, I think back to this group I was in. I was in this support group, and I've been in a lot for invisible illnesses, a lot that were just online based, you know, like calls like this with a bunch of people. And I remember I was in this one group, and I posted a photo of me in the hospital with a thumbs up. And I was like, hey, y'all, no matter what's going on in your life, you can always smile. There's always something to look forward to. And I was kicked out of that group because not everyone can be positive, which I will stand by till the day I die is the biggest load of crap. It doesn't matter what hand you've been dealt. There is something. There is something to live for. There's something to look forward to. I'm going to be in the same pain right now, whether I'm talking to you, whether I'm sitting on my couch, whether I'm in bed crying about how miserable my life is, or if I'm out in the mountains. So why am I going to choose to be inside on a couch on my deathbed when I can literally go hike up a mountain or go sit at a park bench, and I'm going to be in the same pain? I'm going to be in the pain regardless. Why choose to be in a crap setting that is just going to bring me down even further? It doesn't make any sense. And so
that's priceless. Getting kicked out of a group because you're too positive.
Right. Yeah, I love it. You know, and like,
oh my God.
When that happened, I was like, man, I was angry, you know, but I was like, but like, wait a second, like, clearly, like, and there's misery loves company. It is, and it's
absolutely.
It is such a thing especially in the gastroparesis community. Unfortunately, most people with gastroparesis, it is idiopathic. It typically affects women, so no known cause. And a lot of these women, they throw up consistently. I can't because of my surgery, obviously, but you know, they're losing in crazy amounts of weight, but they get into these support groups, and every post is depressing. It's like literally like if you look up like invisible illness hashtags and stuff, it's photos like of people like selfies, and they're just so depressed, and people see that, and then they're like, oh, I need to do that too. No, you don't need to do that too.
Right.
And I get it. It sucks. And I will say this, everyone's journey and timing is different on how long it takes you to overcome something. And I'll be the first to say, I had an advantage when I dealt with all this. Like, the infantry mindset in me is probably a big factor in why I've been able to have the willpower that I have. If this happened and I wasn't, you know, hadn't spent time in the infantry, hadn't spent time downrange, hadn't built up like this need for, you know, being mentally strong, I may be in a different situation. But that's like like the biggest thing in the infantry is like, you literally cannot quit, and you just keep driving on. And so I'm going to keep driving on until I die. And every year, you know, I've got doctors like, maybe you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. And finally, you know, we moved out here to Montana in October, and it's truly like the best decision we've ever made as a family. And
that's great.
My doctors here, as I tell them what I do, everywhere else, I'm like, yeah, you know, I go off into the mountains and fly fish, and they're like, you're going to die. You're stupid. And I come here and I tell them, and they're like, dude, I love it. And then I was seeing an endocrinologist recently about my hypoglycemia, and I was like, I've actually started running. I started running in November, and she's like, well, how far are you running? And I was like, well, I'm training for a marathon. And she's like, and she's like, well, tell me about this. How are you doing this with your hypoglycemia? And I was like, well, that's been an interesting aspect because you need carbs to run, and I can't absorb carbs without a major drop. And so I was like, it's been experimental. I now use these UCAN gels that don't cause me issues, but I am depleted of carbs because there's no way with my health issues that I can make up the calories that I burn, especially like on my long runs. And but she was like,
keep on saying, hey, you can't stop me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, and they all told you
so much. You're not going to stop me.
But she was excited.
And they all
said
like, you were never going to do anything, right? They all told you like, you're never going to do anything. And then the fact now that you're, because let's be clear though, when you talk about that you run regularly, isn't your goal like 100 miles a month or something? It's a good number.
Yeah. So I'm at like, I think 117 for the month right now. So yeah, I'm running 5 to 6 days a week at a minimum. Yeah, I'm at 116 as of right now.
Dang.
And so I'll finish it at around 120 because I'm running right after this. But like I'm just. Somebody asked me recently, what am I chasing? Like, am I chasing? When is enough for me?
Right.
Yeah. And my wife will even sometimes like, because she deals with me when I'm hurt, like when I'm hurt, and she's like, babe, what are you? There's got to be something. When is enough? Where is the top? And I maybe subconsciously I am chasing something that I don't know of, and because a lot of people that would argue like doing a lot of these things that push my health issues, I'm either running from something or I'm chasing something. But my goal end of the day is I've showed my kids that I didn't let a bunch of diseases and a bunch of mishaps and all these surgeries control my life the way they told me. Because I was told never working again, never would go to school, need a feeding tube, need a pacemaker. I don't have any of those.
I love when people tell you can't do something. It's like, oh, hold my beer.
Right. And now I get to tell others that have been told the same kind of stories that they can do it too. And, and
love it.
I have bad days, obviously.
I love this story. Unfortunately, I got
so much.
And I appreciate that you came on.
I'm stoked. I'm so sorry we had these technical difficulties.
Oh, that's okay.
It's frustrating, especially for me.
We've been on when I've been in a hurricane, so.
Yeah.
Stuff happens. And so kind of to wrap up, Cameron, because you're doing all sorts of rad projects and stuff, but how can everybody, connect with you, get in touch with you, and how can we help you?
Yeah. Feel free to, find me on LinkedIn. My website or my business is WildWood. The wild is 2 V's instead of a W. So it's a little play. So a lot of people are like viled, which it helps people remember, and so
for sure.
It's WildWood, and it's just, wildwood.com, but with 2 V's for the first W. That's where, the work is for the agency. And yeah, I'm on all the socials. So no matter where I am, feel free to track me down. If you're dealing with a struggle or something that I may be able to, just give you some words of wisdom, I'm always here to help listen or lend an ear if need be. Always love to help out other nonprofit organizations. So if anyone, and businesses too, I work with a lot of commercial stuff, but always happy to chat about doing, film work together on the storytelling side or on the branded side and all that stuff.
Love it.
No, it's so cool. And your work is just absolutely beautiful.
I appreciate that.
So good. So good. Final thoughts, Christy?
I dig these stories. I hate you had to go through everything that you had to go through, but my faith is very strong, and I know that many times we go through some ugly stuff, especially our veterans. And when you come come out of it, you end up helping so many people, many more. So that's your blessing in a disguise.
Oh yeah.
I like to track down these medical doctors or medical people. They're just complete idiots, but unfortunately we have a lot of idiots in this country. So
yeah,
we won't go there right now.
If you're going to have any type of gastric surgery or general surgery in Illinois
or Indiana, let me know first so I can make sure it's not
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
Please do.
I know who to not go to.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, and I mean, just to piggyback on what Christy said, of course, I mean, it's horrible what you've gone through, but it is an inspiration to everyone to see, like, look at you on the other side of it. Like, what a whew, man. And for you to help inspire others and show, and I agree with you, nature is such a part of our own healing. And again, to go off a little bit, what Christy was saying is, we support our veterans and first responders loud and proud. And this is a reminder to everyone. Um, be nice to our military. You don't know what's going on. There are so many that are suffering in silence. And all the things that we talked about today with all the different organizations, we'll share those links in the comments as well as post promos. And if you want to know any more information, reach out to Cameron. Anyone who is looking to do any kind of outdoor documentaries, be sure to also reach out to Cameron. I do have a couple of contacts that I definitely want to make with you with some other nonprofits that are associated with our veterans. And man, we just can't thank you enough. Continued blessings and health to you and what you're doing to help so many others. And to your family. What a great troop and your friends who have surrounded you and helped you on your journey to finding some peace with your health. So that all being said, and Dan Horgan, thanks for being here, man. We love you. You know that.
Yeah, there were some issues with the comments because I'm seeing
Yeah.
them off my phone, but not on their.
Yeah, me too. I got a couple of messages. So
Sure.
we will follow up, of course, with the links again. And everyone, thank you again for joining us today. And until next week at 1:11 p.m. Eastern Time, just remember, we're all on this journey together. And together, we really do make it awesome. Have a great day, everyone.